Okay, RPG Rules Status Effects tutorial number 7. We're going to have a look at the hit responses here. So these are status effects that when you've got them on you, different things happen when you take an attack. They are in here: Absorption, Counter, Deflection and Mitigation. So we're going to start with Deflection first. I've enabled a bunch of robots in the training room, the test robots who are going to attack me, and we'll have this deflection attack here. We've set it up to deflect all attacks, to apply the status of those deflects. This is the basic setup, and to work 100% of the time. And that's been dropped into the violet ray. So let's see what that does. It's basically going to protect me from everything, pretty much. If I go up to these two robots here, that gun robot, you can see his bullets are just bouncing off me and sometimes going back and hitting him if they go at the right angle. The melee robot, punch robot that's attacking me, is sort of taking damage instead of me. Kind of like 100% resistance on thorns in Diablo 2. And every time I deflect an attack, there's that little spang effect on my chest, like something's bounced off and a little sound effect. So that is with the deflect settings. We can also choose redirect, which means it'll bounce the projectile towards a nearby enemy if it can. So deflect is good for, say, bulletproof skin, where bullets just bounce off you randomly. This is more like a telekinetic effect that's applying a little bit of intelligence to what happens to the deflected projectiles. Sometimes they go to the punch robot, sometimes to this one here, back to the gun robot. We've got a robot with a beam over here as well. You can see that it's getting deflected back to the source as well. Or back to that dead ally there. Should maybe fix that so it doesn't deflect to dead allies. Yep. And then we also have reflect, which means it'll go straight back to the person who fired it every time. Let's turn on the violet ray, go over there, and you'll see the excuse me, the gun robot's bullets are getting deflected back to him every time. Now let's just turn that gun robot off and have a look at something else we can do with this. So we'll just focus on the melee robot. If we tick apply on deflect, and we can untick apply status, we now have basically created the Thorns aura from Diablo 2. Sort of. So the other thing we want to do is we want to have this power condition in here is melee, which was already in there. Okay, that means that the deflection will now only work against melee attacks, melee powers. Here we go. So apply on deflect, that means the power still gets applied to me when I deflect the attack. I'm taking damage. I better turn the violet aura on. Whoops, turned it off again. Right, I'm taking damage, he's taking damage. We're both taking damage from the attack now. So that's sort of, a less powerful version in a way. So yeah, having a quick look at some of the generic settings we have there. We've got the power condition. You can say it'll only work on certain types of powers. The response effects is that little spang there that was happening on my chest. And it was 100% of the time it was happening to all damage types. Let's just modify a couple of them. We'll say it only happens to physical attacks. So crushing, piercing and so on. We'll untick apply and deflect. We'll make it reflect. 50% of the time. Yep. And now we should find that... we'll turn that gun robot back on. Turn on my aura. and now 50% of the time the attack will get deflected. Sometimes we'll take damage, and it'll never work against this robot with radiation beam because it only works against physical attacks. So we didn't deflect that. We'll never deflect that attack with this one. There we go. Yeah, so that's deflection. We'll move on to mitigation now. Mitigation just applies extra resistance and extra damage reduction when it kicks in. So if we put that in the violet aura, mitigation, where is that? The effects deflection. We'll replace that with mitigation. And with this mitigation effect, we've set it to work only 30% of the time, and it's going to create a sort of red shockwave effect on our chest when it kicks in. So I'll have a quick look at that. Turn it on. And that one we didn't take a damage, then we do take a damage. Yeah, and that 5 reduction means we're basically taking no damage at all, really, from the robot. If I drop that, so we just get the extra 50% resistance. That means we will take some damage when we mitigate the attack, but not as much. When we get the red shield effect, we're still taking a little bit of damage. Yep, so that's mitigation, and the reason that's been put in there is for things like shields. You might have an attack that armor defense that blocks a lot of damage but only works 30% of the time. Or if you think of like Amazon bracelets deflecting bullets, they're not 100% reliable. And you have other things in here like the response cooldown. We could say this is actually 100% chance, but it can only happen every 5 seconds. And every time you mitigate an attack, it'll take 5 seconds before you can do it again. And you can have response conditions. This only works, for example, we'll just have a quick look at some of the hit responses I've got. So we'll go T hit response in here. Shield defense only works if you have a shield and it's a frontal attack. So attacks from behind don't get mitigated by the shield, or the shield doesn't reflect attacks coming from behind, and it doesn't reflect attacks if you drop your shield piece of equipment. What else have we got? Frontal attacks 90 degrees for the shield. TK deflect, which is a passive power. It has to be frontal 180 with a 180 degrees arc in front of you, and you're not held. So you have to be sort of conscious and be able to see the attack in order to deflect it. And so on. So that's what that response condition does. Okay, going back to Rainbow Guy. We've done deflection and mitigation. We'll have a look at absorption now. So we'll drop this absorption power into the violet ray. And let's see what that does. Absorption means whenever you take damage, you gain another status effect. It doesn't mitigate damage at all. You'd have to buy resistance on top to do that. But here we're going to say all damage types basically add absorbed speed. And the absorb factor means that that buff will last for 1 second for every point of damage we take. So we've put that in the violet ray. I'll show you how that works now. As this robot kicks and punches us, we start to get stacks of this absorbed speed buff, and it's starting to add up, making us run faster, jump higher, and then eventually it wears off again. So you can use this for characters who you want to get stronger when they take damage in some way. You know, they get faster, they do more damage, they maybe become more invulnerable, whatever you can think of, become physically stronger and can lift heavier stuff. Let's get that robot to throw a crate at us. That'll give us a good long buff. Oof. Yep. You can also, if you get knocked back and take damage, that'll absorb. Yeah. So, yep, there we go. We've got the buff on us now again. So you can use it for a positive effect like that. You can also use it for a vulnerability. Have a character who, whenever they take cold damage from an absorption, gets frozen for a certain amount of time because they're made out of liquid, something like that. So there's a lot you can do there. The rules for absorption are when you take damage of the given type with a given percentage and so on, you get an extra buff or buffs put on you based on, whose duration is based on the amount of damage that you took. And a counter is something kind of very similar, but all it does is it applies these buffs to the person who attacked you instead of to you. So this could be if someone attacks you with a melee attack, they get the flames damage over time put on them because you are literally on fire, for example, or your skin is corrosive, people take acid damage when they attack you with a melee attack. The one I've set up here, which will just pop into the violet aura, is a counter that does knockback to anyone who attacks me. So I'll turn that gun robot back on and get a few characters to attack me, and every time they attack me they will get knocked back. Come on, shoot me. Boom. Punch me. Bam. Yeah, so it's kind of hard to see why this is happening. Maybe I've got some bizarre kind of telekinetic shield on me. What if I was electrically charged and any attack caused me to knock people back? We've got a response beam setting in here. So I'm going to put, is it lightning or electrical beam? One of the settings for beam powers in there. Response effect will make I think it's called taser effects. Taser burst is the one I was after. On my chest. And that'll go to the electrical beam setting. So now whenever the counter kicks in, not only will it play an effect, it'll also boom. You can see now why people are getting knocked back. It's like I'm electrified, and whenever anything hits me it sparks off to the person who attacked me. With, some interesting looking red lightning there. Maybe let's make that light coloured. Yeah, let's make it electrical coloured. It's light blue. And we could, for example, put this on a cooldown. It only happens every 5 seconds. Let's demonstrate that. So now we should be able to only counter these attacks once every 5 seconds. Zapped him. This guy's now punching me with impunity, but 5 seconds later, zip, there we go. Yeah, and should put a sound effect on that taser burst so I don't have to go zip myself. Yeah. Now, it maybe makes sense that, I'm electrically live and only the robot who's punching me, who's physically touching me, should get knocked back. No worries, we can just go power condition is melee in here, and that should be the case. It'll only work on melee powers now. Let's have a go. So, yep. He doesn't get affected, but the one punching and kicking does. Does the radiation beam cause a lightning retaliation? No, it doesn't. Only punching and kicking. So, we've now got a character who's electrically charged and causing people to get knocked back whenever they try to touch him, but ranged attackers are immune. Okay, so I think that's everything we need to cover there. One last one is play on projectile. That's where the effect, instead of playing on the player, this taser burst or whatever, would play on a projectile which is getting bounced back. An example of that is a TK deflect I've got. Let's just find it actually. TK TK deflection self. TK deflection self, I think. Yeah, if we look at that one, that has play on projectile and has a response effect which detaches, so it doesn't follow the projectile, it just plays in space nearby. And if we use that, let's turn on the aura. Projectile should get bounced back and you'll see a little effect play. Boom. You get a little telekinetic twirl that happens where the projectile is, rather than on my chest or whatever, so it makes it look like I'm bouncing the projectiles back. Yep. So that's the hit responses. Just to go over them again quickly. You have deflection makes basically bounces damage back at the attacker, and you can decide whether how you want projectiles to get redirected, whether the attacks that you bounce back are going to apply statuses or not, like you wouldn't want that to happen for Diablo 2-star Thorns, and whether you still take damage and effects from the power. We have Mitigation, which is just extra resistance and reduction, and that's good for shield type powers. We have Absorption, which whenever you take damage you get a status effect applied on you, and Counter, its brother, that applies a status effect to the target whenever you take damage. And they can all be sort of dressed up to have visual effects and beams and so on that apply to them, and you can, for any of them, specify which damage types they apply to, what the percentage chance of them kicking in is, have a cooldown on them, specify which powers they are, and also have checks on the target or the caster to determine when, under what circumstances they kick in. That is hit responses.